charged. You understand? And go to jail. Okay, that's it. That's the way it works. Turn the table. Now, what a guy like James O'Keefe does, who I respect and admire greatly, is entirely different. He's not interested in catching somebody on some stupid, locker room banter that they're going to use as blackmail against somebody, like Billy Bush did. I imagine if Trump offered to pay him $10 billion or $10 million or something, Billy Bush would have shut his beak and said, "Yeah, I'll give me those tapes," and this whole thing goes away. Okay, but every guy in the world, every guy that's honest knows he's been around men that have talked far cruder than Trump. Okay, and I don't do it. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. They make me sick, and it makes me ashamed to be a man when I hear this stupidity. But I'm not as pure as a driven snow either. Believe me. We're all adulterous. We all have these inclinations, these propensities to be murderous in our thoughts because we don't forgive people from our heart. Jesus said that qualifies us to be first degree murderers if you hold a grudge and resentments and all this stuff. So we're all these things, or at least have been murderers and adulterers, and we're all liars and all this. You understand? And so we all have to at least admit and confess we've done these things, even if we're clear, pure as a driven snow now. We have to admit that we have that inclination, that propensity to do that, be lustful, and in the eyes of God, that's adultery. Who hasn't done that? Who isn't doing? I mean, that's a hard one for men especially. But you understand what James O'Keefe is doing is very important. This is about exposing the fruitless deeds of darkness. What Billy Bush did was not exposing the fruitless deeds of the stupid deeds of a typical guy engaging in idiotic, childish locker room banter, which every guy in the world has either done or is doing or will do. I mean, it's just stupidity. I don't know why they do it, but men have their issues and women have their issues. Men walk around like peacocks so often, prescribing some polygamous philosophy of, I'm the cock of the walk, and I want a harem, and King Solomon had one. He was smart and rich, so I want one too. And women won't put up with that crap, and they resent that kind of thinking. Okay, and who can blame them? But then so often women they're call girls and escorts and prostitutes, and all this is accepted. The Jezebel mentality, I call it that. Oh, I'm more valuable than you, and then this conceit that kicks in, and I'm better than men because they're more needy, which is very true. I mean, you hear men say my better half. No, for men, it's more like my better two-thirds. Men are very needy. I told my daughters, I said, look, don't get involved with a guy unless unless you're ready to be his mother, his wife, his girlfriend, his nurse, his babysitter, his housekeeper, all these things. Okay, men are very, very needy. That's why, far less men are single than women, because a woman is such a huge plus in a man's life. But women are able to cope much better. And then you want to say that men in any way are superior to women. I mean, look, I'm not saying women are superior to men, but as far as being a couple, it's much more advantageous in most men's world, their paradigm, it's to have a woman than it is for a woman to have a man. Men are much needier of the two creatures. Even though men do stuff that women can't do, they know that. Women recognize that men, if they had to get their car fixed, very few women are competent or even capable. I mean, at least they don't see that, to go and do those jobs. Even though a lot of women can do them, they just leave it to men. I can't do that. That's a man's job, right? Even though it really isn't. A woman can learn to do it, but then she's beating up her hands, which they want to keep dainty and feminine looking. And men understand it. We get it. We get there's jobs that men pretty much do and women don't. But this whole battle of the sexes things has got to end, man. We're in this together. This is a satanic thing that would divide men and women, because it's a very holy, godly thing that God made the male and female, the opposite sexes, just like the opposite poles of a magnet. And the electrical charges and all the other great powerful forces in the universe that God created, that is the key and building blocks of creation. This tension between these two forces, the yin and yang, that gets the job done. So we complement each other greatly by being on the same page and unifying and accepting our lot, saying yes, stepping up to the plate and say, yeah, I'll be the protector and the defender of the women and the children. It's women and children first. This is the proper order of things, this chivalrous spirit, this valiant spirit that men have, and the protector thing and the defender and doing the crappy jobs that women don't want to do. And, we understand why they don't want to do them, and we're okay with that. And so, we can live together in harmony. This is the greatest threat to these people at the top. They don't want people to figure out that humanity at large can live together in peace and harmony and safety and security and all these things. They want us to believe the opposite. So, anyhow, I'm disgusted with the mainstream media. That's how I got off on that jag. I want to expand a little on this liberal versus conservative, on the charitableness that Alex Jones is always citing this study. And I was looking it up. I did my own research recently on that. And it's interesting. But, what does the Bible say about giving? It's clear that Jesus said, look, don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing. So it could be that a lot of these so-called liberals, because again, that's a very subjective term, that if we took a quiz, that we might find out, wow, I thought I was a liberal, but it turns out I'm more of a conservative, or at least I scored more on that. So if you had to weigh it out like a scale, it turns out I thought I was really liberal, but it turns out I'm kind of leaning on the conservative side. And conversely, I thought I was a conservative, but it turns out I'm actually more of a liberal in my philosophy, according to this quiz that we've already had a meeting of the minds and agreed these questions are fair, and we have this consensus as to the validity of this exam, this quiz, this test, to determine whether you're a conservative or a liberal. You understand what I'm saying here? So we've all got to get it, that these are just terms made to divide. So if somebody says, look, I just don't tell. I give a lot to charity according to the percentage of my income. So if the conservatives are higher income, of course they're going to give a higher percentage, or a higher in terms of numbers, but the percentage might actually be lower. So the liberals might be giving higher of their actual income percentage. They might be more generous in tipping, whatever, but it's not accounted. So in this survey that was done, it could be very askew, very easy to be askew in a survey like that, especially if people are secretive about their giving. So it's not a very good, it just serves to divide when you come up with this idea that liberals are cheap and conservatives are generous, relatively speaking. Especially, let's say conservative, let's say rich dad Robert Kiyosaki is a conservative, he says. When he's taking a huge chunk of that $50 billion a year that goes into Section 8 housing subsidy, that's going in his pocket. And he's a conservative, and he's against the welfare and all. Wait a minute. You understand? I mean, housing prices would drop overnight. You take that $50 billion away. I guarantee it. With everything I know about economics, I'd bet my life, not just all my possessions, everything I have, that the cost of housing would drop overnight. I'd bet my life you take that $50 billion away welfare subsidy into the Section 8, that Robert Kiyosaki would be scrambling to lower his rents tomorrow. Guaranteed. All the landlords across America would be. Your housing dollars would go through the roof. So this is the welfare. This is the net result of this welfare money. And yet he's going to call himself a conservative. But the liberals think they're the ones that are the proponents of the welfare, when really the welfare, the subsidies are just making the problems worse. It's mind-numbing. The stupidity and the ignorance and the confusion out there. The massive acute ignorance on this subject. Got stereotypes, archetypes. We got pseudo definitions for terms that they have no meaning in the minds. They're just designed or defined defined terms defined to divide. And it's a morass of madness, really. This whole thing, that the whole liberal conservative thing is just it's agonizing to me that what got me hooked on watching the Alex Jones show was his whole theme of the show was shattering the left-right paradigm. And then when I see his reporters and him get on this slam on the lefties and the leftists without defining it, but he himself calls himself a classic liberal. And I get that. I'm a classic liberal. But I'm also fiscally prudent. I get both sides of this equation. I want our cost of living to go down. If that means taxes go down, great. 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 I want the cost of living tax to go down. That's what's supposed to happen. That should be liberal. That should be a conservative cause. We should understand this in its entirety. But do we? So often I don't think we do. I really don't. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I got to be honest with you. And everybody's got to be willing to carry their fair share of weight of this cross of madness, really.